In this video, we're going to be talking about solving equations with two absolute values. So when we have an equation that has an absolute value on the left and an absolute value on the right, we're going to solve the related linear equations. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the inside pieces of that first equation as they are, and we're going to set them equal to the positive of our second and then the negative of our second. So we're basically looking at two different problems here. So let's do some examples and let's see how this works out. So in our first example, it says solve the equation, and then we're going to check our solutions to make sure that we're right. So here we have the absolute value of 3x minus 4 equals the absolute value of x. So what we're going to do is we're going to see that we have our absolute value here, and we have an absolute value here. And so we're going to take the inside absolute value, so the 3x minus 4, and we're going to set that equal to our x, which is the inside over here, right? So set that equal to x, and that's going to be the first thing that we do. Now we also need to take that 3x minus 4, and we need to set that equal to the negative of our other side. And then we're going to work those out and solve for x. So on my first equation, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So I'm going to have 3x equals x plus 4. Then I'll subtract x from both sides. And 2x equals 4. Divide both sides by 2. And that's going to give me a first answer of x equals 2. So here on our second portion of this problem, we're going to go ahead and we're going to distribute that negative sign. And that's going to give us a 3x minus 4 equals a negative x. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and do it a little bit different. I'm going to subtract my 3x this time. I'm going to get negative 4 equals a negative 4x. Then I'll divide both sides by negative 4. And I'm going to get 1 equals x. That's going to be my second answer. And so now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to check my solutions. So let's move this up a little bit. So we're going to check our solutions. So that means we're going to be plugging in the 2 into the x spot and the 1 into the x's spot. So let's do the 2 first. So we have the absolute value of 3 times 2 minus 4. And we want to know, does that equal the absolute value of 2? So we'll go ahead and we'll work out this right there. And that's going to give us the absolute value of 2. And that's a 2. And the absolute value of 2 is 2. And we see that they match. And so that tells us that this right here is a solution. So x equals 2 is a solution. And let's check our second answer. So the absolute value of 3 times 1 minus 4. And we want to know, does that equal the absolute value of 1? So again, we're going to work out our 3 times 1 minus 4. And that's going to give us the absolute value of negative 1. And the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. And the absolute value of 1 is 1. And when we compare those, we see that they match, which tells us that x equals 1 is also a solution. So let's do one more problem. Here we have the absolute value of 4x minus 10 equals 2 times the absolute value of 3x plus 1. So here we see one set of absolute values and then a second set of absolute values. So we're going to take our first absolute value, the one on the left, we're going to write it twice. 4x minus 10 equals, right? Oops, let me get some. It's going to equal 2 times 3x plus 1. Right? And then we have to do it a second time, where we're going to take that 4x minus 10 and we're going to set that equal to a negative times 2 times 3x plus 1. So let's work out our equation on the left first. So we're going to begin by distributing the 2, and that is going to give us 4x minus 10 equals 6x plus 2. I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I have negative 10 equals 2x plus 2. I'm going to subtract 2 from each side. I get negative 12 equals 2x. Then we'll divide both sides by 2 because we're trying to get the x by itself. And we're going to get negative 6 equals x. And so that is our first solution. Now to do this second problem, we're going to begin by distributing that negative to the inside. So what we're really kind of looking at here is 4x minus 10 equals negative 2 times 3x plus 1. And so now we're going to distribute that negative 2. And that's going to give us a 4x minus 10 equals negative 6x minus 2. So here, I'm going to add the 6x to both sides to move it over. And I'm going to get 10x minus 10 equals negative 2. Then I will add 10 to both sides to get rid of that 10. I'm left with 10x equals 8. Then we'll divide both sides by 10. And we're going to get x equals 8 over 10. But we're going to need to reduce that. And that's going to make, let's see, 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. So here we're going to have x equals 4/5. And now we just need to check and see if we're right, if we've done them correctly. So here we have the absolute value of 4 times negative 6 minus 10. We want to know, does that equal 2 times the absolute value of 3 times negative 6 plus 1. Oh, kind of out of room there almost. And so we're going to work out our inside piece here, and that's going to give us the absolute value. Let's see, 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. Subtract 10 is a negative 34. And the absolute value of negative 34 is 34. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to work out this side. So we'll have 2 times the absolute value of, and 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. If we add 1 to that, we get a negative 17. The absolute value of negative 17 is 17. So we'll have 2 times 17, which is 34. And we see that these match. So that tells us that x equals negative 6 is one of our solutions. But we still need to check our other piece. So let's come over here and we're going to go ahead and check. So 4 times 4/5 minus 10. And we want to know, does that equal 2 times the absolute value of 3 times 4/5 plus 1? So just like we did, we're going to go ahead and use our calculator and find the inside pieces here. So 4 times 4/5 minus 10. And when we plug that in, we're going to see that we get a negative, let me give myself a little bit more room here, a negative 34 over 5. And we know that the absolute value of negative 34 over 5 is 34 over 5. So I'm going to come over here to this side. We're going to work out that inside piece there. So we'll have 2 times the absolute value of, and if we take our calculator and we go ahead and we plug in 3 times 4/5 plus 1, we're going to get a 17 over 5. And the absolute value of 17 over 5 is in fact 17 over 5. And if we multiply that by 2, we're going to get a 34 over 5. And here we see that those in fact do match, meaning that our second answer is x equals 4/5, and that is correct. And so that is how you solve absolute value equations when you have two absolute values.